Michael Meneghetti. Can you hear me? Can you listen to me?
I'm just getting things set up.
I already hear you.
Okay.
You're ready? Let's go.
I'm ready. Okay.
How are you,
Okay.
friend? How Portugal
Man,
is for you?
oh, muito bom, muito bom. Eu gosto de Portugal muito.
Ah,
Uh,
you're already speaking.
uh, eu tenho pouquinho, is that right? Eu pouquinho português. Yeah.
Bocadinho de português. Já falo bocadinho de português.
Sim, sim, sim. Eu falo pouquinho português, yeah. I
Yeah,
started my lessons this week.
it's okay. It's okay. We can speak in English. It's okay.
Yeah.
This is inside of the audio visual, and thank you for your contributions to the video screening to Electric Dreams. And inside of the what I call the department of cinema and audio visuals from Consolidar, we decided to create Autoscopia. That is kind of a self-portrait from culture to culture, you know, like the culture does a self-portrait to herself, you know, like I mediate the process for now. I'm the one mediating, but I
Okay.
hope in the future other can mediate this process and keep on this portrait that is a global portrait. It's not something specifically from the Portuguese culture or for the Anglo-Saxonic culture. It's a journey that actually it's possible now because people get confined and suddenly they adapt better to in different generations. They are adapting better to this circumstance and to the capacity of using the platforms to communicate. How's your work?
Hey, it's well, this is the thing about being a bit nomadic for the last 4 or 5 years. It's constantly adapting, and you're mixing that in with parenthood and being a migrant and moving to new places, and it's like you keep evaluating well the auto portrait or what is your self portrait in each space. It's like when you're the other and when you're a minority, when you don't have necessarily the same kind of access to the kind of things you were used to making. I think, yeah, I feel like my work's been constantly in flux, especially being like studio less. So I've constantly had to like adapt the way I make work in terms of time and schedules and kind of with everything kind of evolving around me as well. So I'm watching my child grow up and like in different roles taking shape and being in new countries. I think that's the kind of like where I'm constantly sort of seeing work, my artwork kind of adapting to that, especially to what's in my immediate environment as well, what's accessible to me. The work I sent for this year's Consolidat was a work I made early on when I first arrived in Taiwan, and started meeting with local artists there and making work together. And that was kind of like my visual representation of the sound art that was being produced by Saravina, and that kind of interaction of like local, global kind of way of trying to make something new, happen in that space. And for both of us, that was a new experience. Me performing to kind of that autonomous music and sound work, and I'm producing these kind of prosthetics and reacting to the sound that's kind of coming through. That what Saravina is also playing, and also she was responding to me in the kind of actions I was doing in the performance work as well, with all my drawing gestures and different sounds I was making with like different apparatuses and prosthetics. So because I come from that primarily a performance background or like kind of area, and then I build in things with like my sculptural work and printing, and I find that I'm constantly looking for those little nooks where I can find material to work with and spaces to work within. Hence, yeah, and also being, as I said before, being nomadic has sort of shaped the way that how I regard making work now. So it's more ethereal. The work is temporary. Storage is always an issue, and how you leave, whether it's a physical storage of building sculptures or your sort of impact on the kind of materials you use to make the work, and then also just actual digital space and physical space. You know, how much storage can you carry around? How many hard drives can you carry around that carries all the memories of your work, the photography, like all that kind of stuff weighs up on the technology as well. So I'm constantly evaluating things on those kind of levels now, and the kind of art I want to make, like for now and in the future too. So, and I've done like I don't know if you've done it, but I've done several purges of household materials and tools and stuff. So it's like every time I've moved, I'm kind of like loath to like restart the collection of things. Yeah. And I often do that. So it's nice at this stage just to accept that it's not necessarily the vestige of the work, the sculpture, the drawing, the photo, but it's the process. So of making that or getting to that point, I think. But I don't know how.
I'm going to ask you a little favor, my friend, because I cannot see very well your face.
Yeah, hang on a sec. I'm going to put a light on.
Some light.
Yeah, hang on a sec. Un momento. Okay.
And the first sentence we can see in the background is espera and wait. You know?
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. No, it's good. A good warm up.
No, it's
How's
nice. It's nice to hear you, and it's funny to hear. I am not surprised about those questions and those philosophic questions about the material and this materialization. When I met you, we met in Timor. You were grabbing garbage and taping it with tape all around you, all around your body. Exhaustions of of garbage that you could find everywhere, and the kids were playing after you and making looking very funny how this guy appears here and it's just attaching garbage to himself and transforming into this fluffy monster of garbage. It's a good memory. How it got in your memories, Timor? What did you feel at that moment? You still have memories from?
Oh, absolutely. That was definitely the start. Like it kind of like that experience in Timor was transformative in more than one way, because I'd been traveling a little bit through Indonesia before and Taiwan and kind of like sort of that area of Southeast Asia before East Timor. And I think it was just like another piece of that puzzle of seeing how we're all kind of interconnected in spaces. So in going to East Timor, we're seeing like this other effect, all of a sudden another link to Europe, also a link to a totally different culture in itself. Like, I was eating, I think, broa down one of the little streets, like really authentic broa, and then at the same time, there's all this tropical food, and it was a totally surreal experience. And then I started finding myself tracing like, or seeing traces of the first wave of like Portuguese travelers, moving through different spaces everywhere I went. I started seeing little hints and these kind of connections, and now I'm living in Portugal, and it's a totally different world again. And being someone of European heritage, that all my family's Italian. They moved across to Australia after the Second World War, and I'm kind of living in this sort of mixed culture of
It's
it's
true.
a hot pot there, and then
It's
coming
one of the
back.
questions I wanted to make. How is your genetic memory working out? Like, because there is this amazing revelations that you can find from your base cultures. Like, for example, for me, I'm Portuguese, but there is a part of my family that comes back to Portugal, let's say 150, 200 years ago. But before that branch of my family travel a lot by India, by Brazil, and all that. And I when I connect with some of these cultures that fused with me, I have like revelations of things that I used to do when I was a kid, or that I have as a traditional thing that I do in my daily life. How is your genetic memory working out? What is the revelations you have?
It's a little schizophrenic,
Yeah, it's
it's
a little bit.
it's yeah, it's well, look, I, I'm constantly questioning that kind of idea of like what is ritual, what is tradition every year that kind of comes around. And the the best way I can describe it is like out of a science fiction novel. We get into these, we are these people that kind of leave into these space and time machines, spaceships, planes. We travel through space and time, and then we arrive in a new land. And then we kind of set up something that we try to remember that doesn't exist anymore, because by the time we've arrived in that new space, that world is gone. And so you hang on to these older vestiges of something that doesn't exist anymore. And then when you go back into that space or to a new space, you see remnants of it, but it's all been readjusted. And it's like, oh, I get that, but I don't know why I get it. And that's kind of like, it's sort of like your native tongue. When you understand the rules, but you can't explain why it is so. And it is kind of fun. Like when you see, there's been a couple of moments where it's like, I'd associate a certain type of, like, say, bathrooms, because that's one of the most common thing you visit when you're into new spaces. But like, there's like squat toilets in Indonesia, and then I found myself having to use a bathroom on the top of the Vatican, and it's like a squat toilet. And it's like, oh, I thought squat toilets were like, like, were specific to this area, you know what I mean? It's like, but it's over here too. Just little things like that, because they're rare in Australia. You don't see them as often. So it's like the more you travel, I think, or move around, I think the more similarities you find as opposed to differences with people. And there's so many like family centric ideas around like that happen, like say in Indonesia and East Timor, and it's really similar to European kind of family-centric places like Italy and Portugal, and where there is a bigger sort of build around that kind of family connection, which isn't as apparent in Australian culture. So I can kind of link all those things together. Like, when I finally visited, like where my grandparents were born in Italy, it was like, oh wow, why did they leave? It's so beautiful here. But then it might not have been beautiful 60 years ago when everyone was starving and, and like having a really hard time trying to find work and all that kind of stuff. So I see traces in people's faces, especially like living in Taiwan for 2 years, where I was like, one of the few European looking people around, where it was like a sea of everyone was either, a mix of Han Chinese, ethnic, or First Nation, Taiwanese, all blended in. And then it's like, here's this like kind of tall yeah, I guess Westerner sort of roaming around, and then all of a sudden I'm in Europe again, and everyone's got brown hair, brown eyes, and beards, and it's kind of like it. You kind of you stand out to being anonymous, and you find different ways to stand out. So, yeah, there are little points where, especially when it comes around food and flavors, when certain things zing, and you find a connection to something that you grew up with. Like I found this really weird connection to the first time I tried aguardente, the local drink here, the strong stuff, and to my grandparents or my grandfather's like grappa, which is a distilled like wine. They're really similar in taste, and they kind of have the same kind of feeling where it's like, oh, this reminds me of my grandfather, or there's this kind of this, or this these kind of like mixes in. So there are a lot of similarities with like sounds that remind me. Maybe because it's also of our Latin connection with the origins of the languages that also link it together. But Portugal feels familiar and also different at the same time.
Well, Italians before first for Europe, it's the Renaissance. It's a big influence above from obviously the Roman Empire, but Italy is a territory of lots of exchange with North Africa and a lot of sailing in the Mediterranean, um, and um, and. And obviously, I'm sure that you're very curious also about that line coast that creates your culture, because Egypt is just in the other side of the of the
That's the
horizon.
thing. Yeah, it's like the more you find out, the more you realize you know like nothing. It's like there's so much recorded history here that it's like, oh my God, it's
It's an
like
overdose.
it's a super overdose. You know, it's like just here where I'm living in Figueira da Foz, there's like the first dinosaur footprints discovered in Portugal, like just down the road. And then, you know, like maybe 5 kilometers bicycle ride up a hill. There's one of the first discovered like dolmens, ancient dolmens from the Neolithic period. And then, you know, like there were pirates here. And there's like, you know, this kind of, it's just the medieval, like, you know, castles and the forts. And then there's this side, and then there's some Roman trails. And then it's like, oh my God, like it's a bit of an overload, which is incredible. But I don't get bored. It's a lovely town, but there's so much to kind of unpack. And you know, you see that, and it's all recorded. Where that's one of the most amazing things about a lot of European cultures, that it's so well documented,
Yeah,
you know,
it's true.
and it's blended. Yeah,
But
you know,
how was the impact of being born? You born in Australia, so how is
yeah,
the impact with the local culture? That is a huge, rich, also very rich culture, very much more dismaterialized, meaning there is no architectonic almost discovers in Australia, because the tribes are very nomad. There's more than 200 dialects in Australia, meaning there would be more than 200 countries inside
yeah.
the territory. How do you live with that cultural impact?
You know, that's a really hard thing to grapple with, because it's you can. I think growing up, in particularly maybe like my generations, we were like the first wave of like more of the local history was being introduced and into like public education. But there's a lot of ignorance, and you can almost choose to to ignore it if you wanted to. You could live your whole life. I feel that you could do that without accepting or acknowledging any of the kind of the immense history that is surrounding you in that space. And if you don't go seeking it, you won't necessarily find out more about it. And it's a really confronting thing to deal with. Firstly, because you know all my family are relatively newer citizens to Australia, but also they came from working class uh, history, so lower educated, and in terms of like what, and they just mostly all worked in factories in the country, rural areas. And by that point, there was a lot of genocide that was put upon the first Australians. So a lot of their traces were pushed away. So I grew up, I think, the first half of my life not having a lot of connection with many Indigenous people, and being unaware of a lot of the practice and histories until much later. And it's for me, it felt like it was always on the periphery, and you have to kind of actively read more into it to understand and get to and meet more people that can tell you more about the kind of the history, the broader history of Australia, more than the 200 years of European colonization. So.
And did you had the chance to work a little bit that part, to get more in touch, to travel a little bit around Australia, to?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm an intrepid traveler around Australia. I've been to a fair scope of the places, but it's a big place, and there's a lot more. There's a lot more to see. Like, I feel like I've just hung around the fringes on the edges, like just scared to go into the void because I'm going to disappear. You know, I think there's a fear of that. We make a lot of movies about getting lost in the center. So it's every place I've been to in Australia, like from the north to the west, they're all kind of like strange places that they feel Australian, but they're a little bit different. To like, I'm from Melbourne, so it's each place I've been to has its own way of, you know, forming itself, its own kind of culture in it that feels similar, but also it's a little bit different too. And yeah, I think the biggest thing is for me, I felt that there was, because I was sort of a bit more trying to hang on to maybe my own culture or bridge that gap between the mainstream Australian culture and my Italian family cultures. I felt like the cost of that was not finding out a lot more than I could about the immense history that had existed before the settlers and colonists arrived into Australia, and how that, and it's only later through my own work and artistic practice that I've slowly started to try and get my head around the gravity of it, you know. And it's I think it's one of the biggest things that we have to work through, is resolving a proper relationship between the First Nations people of Australia and the current situation, because until that works towards an actual resolution, we're all going to be in this kind of this weird sort of vague space, you know, about, you know, we're fighting about celebrating Australia Day. We can't agree on a date for that, or these rituals and what's important and what's unimportant, what's, you know, it's really topical. And it's one of those things that the only way you can find out more is to try and meet with elders and people of the local communities that actually want to share the knowledge with you.
Yeah, it's funny because we decided to let this name Electric Dream exactly because of some legends related to that, to Australia, to Oceania, we call it.
Yeah.
Dreamland, called the Timorans call them. And
Dreamland.
Dreamland. And,
Okay.
and Dreamland, apparently, for what I understand, what is Dreamland? Dreamland is a higher level, existential place, meaning that that is a place where your soul is already very worked, and then it's an opening in space to born in this land, in this dreamland, and where you live in a plenty of abundance, so you don't need to actually build anything or record anything about your history. because you live in a kind of a, intermediate reality between reality and dream that has more or less the same value, and it's the experience that is valid, and the experience is the experience of community, it's the experience of space, of time, of the animals, of the cosmos, in the microcosmos, and when I started learning all these things in Timor about Australia, for me it was like shit. Wow, this is almost like the film Avatar, like there's kind of a subculture with a completely different relation of perception of the space and of the time, and
Yeah, it's
there's
not.
another
Yeah, not
subculture.
apart from. They're not apart from the land. They're part of it, and it's. I just read a book, a science fiction novel by Ursula K. Le Guin, and she kind of explores this idea a lot with this book. It's called The World. The word for world is forest, and it was written in the 70s, and it's got a very similar kind of storyline to Avatar. So it might have been maybe like a proto Avatar, but probably inspired by the dreaming, the song lines, the kind of connection. And it's like these kind of worlds are timeless because you're not necessarily making your mark as an individual, but it's just a presence of people that are eternal in a way, like where it's just moving with time, life, death, of these cycles. And we had that here, with the potentially with the dolmen culture, where we've got these tombs on the top, which are like a returning to the mother goddess. These ideas have been really highly altered, since the introduction of these sort of singular mountain gods that have popped up everywhere, that are patriarchal and don't necessarily are inclusive of the actual reality of procreation and life, which, it's man and woman, as opposed to a man that begets everything. Like, it doesn't make, yeah. And we've carried on these really high, patrilineal ideals for a long time, Catholicism has sort of traveled the whole world, and before that it was Islam, and before that was Hebrew. Like, these are really strong mountain gods that kind of, have kind of changed the way we see the world.
Yeah, it's true, and it's true also to it's very beautiful to see that in the Timorese culture, with the relation between woman and man still very calibrated in terms of in terms of the life in the districts, and the Umalulik, and the relation of female Umalulik and male Umalulik, that was still very close to the equilibrium, in some way. I wanted to ask you, how is your relation with institutions in Portugal? How have you been received in Portugal as an artist, as a thinker, as a misogynic culture that you are bringing back, going to Australia to have a kind of a different experience, and bringing back that experience to Europe, and returning a little bit to our culture in a way? How do
Well,
you feel institutions have you been received in Portugal? Did you have the possibility of doing some art residencies? Did people met you?
look, I haven't really like done the door knock and traveled around and introduced myself too much. I've just mostly been staying put in Figueira da Foz and just seeing what's happening locally. And there's a few great little festivals that are here, but I mean, it's sort of the time of my life right now where I've been focused on just immigrating here properly. And so the focus has just been like doing the family duties, and being a good house husband, and making sure that everything is getting, like, so our roots can take take place. But you know, things are happening in a different time, I think, and also we've also had the massive pandemic, which has slowed things down too in terms of going around and traveling. But I think it's a pretty receptive place, and there's lots of opportunities, I think, that are around. And the more, I think for me, I'm trying to bridge that gap just by getting to immerse myself in the culture, so I have a good understanding of what's happening. And I've always sort of like to enjoyed taking on what's around me, and before I kind of start broadcasting too much, because it already might exist. And so for me, these last couple of years have been, well, I really like Portugal a lot, and what's hot here, what's happening, and what's happening in the smaller towns, and who are the kind of people that are making stuff happen. So I'm just slowly just making friends and enjoying that time. And it's like, you know, I see Portugal as a place that there are lots of different things happening, and the more I stay here, the more it's like I find out. It's like, oh wow, that's okay. So there's a lot of hidden surprises, which I love. It's for a small country, it's got a lot to figure out. And the longer, as I said this before, the longer I stay here, the more questions I have. And it helps also slowly that I'm learning the language at a very slow pace, but it actually helps a lot more, as well as to appreciate this place more. I think it's bridging a lot of really cool connections that I never really thought possible. But I feel like the connections I've made here kind of link back, oddly enough, to Taiwan and Australia and places I've been before, and just seeing like these. I feel like I've been on the trail of Portugal since I started moving around as a country for its historical kind of explorations, but also right now it's a very interesting time for it too, because there's just so much I didn't know about this place, and the more I stay here, the more it kind of blows my mind a little bit. So it's
the possibility to travel a little bit around the country, to meet other places, because you were trying to find your spots. And it was curious for me that I was in a way following you into that process. It was funny for
yeah. Look, it was wonderful meeting Susanna and Tiago. That was a magic, man. Thank you so much for that introduction, and we had a great time. And I can't say that every place I've been on, like just visiting, it's like I said I could live here. This is pretty amazing. Like, but every place is so different, you know. So, but eventually we had to choose, and Figueira da Foz just looked like just had that right kind of the right.
Golden Coast there. It's a little bit of Golden Coast.
Yeah, which I never lived on, you know. So, but it was with everything. It had, you know, and the longer I've stayed here, the more I love it. But I also like its connection to Coimbra, and then to the rest of like. All right, man. It's a good place. It's a good place to be, and I'm pretty happy to be anywhere in Portugal, because every place I've been to, I can't really complain about anything really, because there's just a lot to check out. And the only thing I can complain about is that I have to get my Portuguese license so I can drive more. That's about it. And so
that's about it. What is happening? What happened?
No, I just my Australian license expired, so now I have to get a Portuguese license, and so I have to do it all in Portuguese. So
it won't be difficult. It won't be difficult for sure.
Okay. No, it's gonna be fine.
I don't think it will be difficult, but if you want, we can talk about that.
No. I'm getting my A1, A2, and then I can do it. That'll be all good. So, but no, I'm looking forward to meeting a lot more artistic practice happening here, and trying to start my own projects and working out some sort of thing that can kind of fit in with what's already happening. But it's just been nice being kind of just have this freedom, and I've had this kind of freedom for 2 years, just to play with making little small things, and you know, and there's no pressure to put on events. There's just been this sort of peacefulness, just to be with the land that's here. and find things through encounters, and it's just finding what motivates me to make work. Because once you start making you're making things, then there's that kind of like, well, why do I need to make this, as opposed to why do I want to make this? And it's like, well, so then what do you do with it once you've made it? Because it's like, is it going to fit in your apartment? Because then, or is it going to be useful to your apartment? So what is the purpose of making this kind of art? And so then that's been the kind of like the questions that I kind of face daily. So it's,
well, that is very
it's that
interesting. That is I think that's the big issue of the 21st century. It's the dismaterialization. Why we materialize so much? Why we do things that sustain in the space so much, that impact so much in the space? You know, like where is our basis? When we look to the beginning, what were we doing in the beginning? In the beginning, we were just farming, you know, like looking for peace, not being attacked by animals, not being attacked by other men, just trying to farm, trying to get the knowledge together, you know, like this
not
plant,
starve in the winter.
We plant them like this, and suddenly we got in all this mess of territory planning and rulements and regulations and we became animals again. We became monkeys again. We just started destroying each other in a furtive way until we found out this was a round above, you know, like that everybody would face the other just in the other side of the world. And I think we still didn't came out of that, you know, like we are still like facing the fact that the more we turn around, the more we face ourselves back, you know, like and so that's a great questioning. I think I think the world of art is questioning a lot that, also because we are consuming a lot materials, you know, like to produce this and that. We are buying, we start by recycling plastic, and suddenly we are buying plastic and just to do the piece, you know. And we don't the boundaries are getting more and more they are disappearing, you know, like, and we are facing mistakes, you know, like in a way.
We're rushing to the zero value of what it is to make art, like with all this kind of content producing, even like photos we're making every day and generating an image. We're all chasing these things to constantly have this output, and it is really fun to kind of just ease up on that and make simple projects again. Like I made a wooden mallet yesterday, which sat kind of in my space for like a year. You know, like I hadn't done anything with it. I found a couple of pieces of eucalyptus lying around the street and said, I'll make a tool with that. And then I hadn't done anything with it. And finally I sort of made this thing. And it took me like a day of hand sawing and sanding and you know, that kind of stuff. But the satisfaction is like, it's kind of like that joy of a simple joy of just closing the loop and getting something done that you wanted to do. And now it exists now. It's like, well, then what do you do with that? You've got a hammer. So what do you make with that? Oh, that's the next thing, you know? So it's like that. I think I read it, that line out of the Paulo Coelho, his book, The Pilgrimage. You know, he goes along to the Camino de Santiago, and he's like, he has to find his sword, but then once he finds his sword, he has to work out what he has to do with it. And so he knows that finding his sword's purpose, and then he can find it. Like it's all good having a sword, but what are you going to do with it? Like, so it's about those kind of the questions I'm sort of more interested in at this point. It's like I can continue to produce stuff and make things, but it's like at the end of it, what's why do I make that? And if it's for just the sheer joy of making something, then make it and you enjoy it. But if it's to sort of for something else that doesn't feed whatever this existence is, your soul or whatever you call it, then you have to kind of like discard it, like, or I don't know, like think of something else, because you can't do all the projects.
For sure, it's nothing that the Sufists, for example, didn't think about it, or that there is people all the time on Earth questioning that. In our tradition, more Latin tradition, we have Sant'Antão. Sant'Antão was a guy obsessed with the fact that the demons were inside of everything that was material, you know, like and he wanted to banish himself from all the material world until he find out that he couldn't banish from the only thing he couldn't banish is his own body. That was also a material process. So,
All
so
right. Yeah.
you kind of
Salantan.
Sententão. That then it's going to ramificate to a lot of things related to Sant Antonio. That is
Okay.
the padroeiro of Lisbon in this case.
No way.
Yeah,
That's so
yeah.
funny. That's like my favorite, my grandmother's favorite. Santo Antonio, like yeah, my favorite,
Beginning
favorite saint. Yeah.
As
Yeah,
Santentão,
okay.
very illustrated by painters during also
It's so
Renaissance,
funny.
but also during the 20th century. For it's a religious story. It's a myth. It's a fusion. It's also a sophist in a way because
Yeah.
this question of the dismaterialization and why we need to materialize so much, and what brings us to existence, and why these hands are constantly producing things that at a certain point it's impossible to care or to take to another place, you know, like it's a very interesting subject. It made me remember again that in Timor also you did a piece that resonated a lot with me because at that moment I was thinking a lot about the fact of that humanity is kinds of becomes something different when it starts using extensions, and so you had you became a quadruple that
Yeah.
that compensates
Yeah.
the disequilibrium of the body with the new extensions that could put the body back into this kind of animal that can walk in four legs, almost like a horse, a dog.
But the other thing as well is that it's a further like disconnection from the ground. So the prosthetics or whatever they are further kind of remove you, like you kind of you're further away from the ground and connecting to the. So there's two things that like happening at the same time. It's like a pantomime of an animal, but you're well disconnected. So from the space itself, and yeah, that's been the prosthetics are kind of like it's like making tools where we kind of we keep removing ourselves further. I mean, we are a tool making species. We are constantly making tools and better tools and crazy tools and more elaborate tools and ridiculous tools and useless tools and really specific function tools, you know, but we make tools. And yeah, it's sort of, and now we're in this kind of like whole new wave. Like I couldn't get over what's that word? The pivoting in terms of masks that are being made and tools that are like, they're going to help you through the corona pandemic in the interim before we get a vaccination done. But it's like, you know, there's like all these new masks and all this new wear and like all this new fashion.
I remember in the beginning of I was completely captured by surprise by the corona. I was traveling from Paris to Portugal, and I had a problem in my van, so I had to stop. I had to fix the van in a mechanics. And at a certain point I was in the south of France and the borders were going to close, and mainly my family is French, so, and I have the other part that is Portuguese, so I was in the middle of the situation, so I decided to stay in France because I didn't understand very well how could I go back inside if the borders close, and to Portugal I can always get the Caminho de Santiago and just walk back home.
Oh yeah, right, okay.
and at a certain point it looked like, okay, it's apocalypse, you know, like this is going the closing everything, the process of giving food to the supermarkets because people were going crazy with the hygienic paper and all that. So I started like looking at this. This is going to be a panic attack from the world, you know, like and we are going to destroy our machine in a way by a panic attack, you know, like. So I'm going to do in Timor. No? I'm going to dedicate myself to hunt in a aquatic. So I will start fishing in subaquatic diving. You know, like to get to get some food in case this is going to vanish, because I was in the seaside. I was in the Gulf Biscaya, so I could always do diving, you know, like, and starting to analyze the species, because I was in a kind of a small natural forest that is Sinuous. So I started looking at the species I could eat and how could I nurture myself, because I realized that I was going to spend a few time without food from the normal resources from the supermarkets. And
I started looking at I started thinking of that too. Like I was like I think I made a slingshot, was one of the first things I made, and I started like thinking, okay, I can get a slingshot. I could probably make a nest, like a trap to catch some pigeons. I can probably kill some pigeons if it gets bad. You know, there's a lot of pigeons around, and there's a lot of seagulls. I'm sure that I could probably eat them. So I started thinking the same thing.
we become MacGyvers, no? It's a fine artist. We become MacGyvers immediately, trying to find out solutions. And one of the things that I started drawing. I was so many at a certain point. The police was stacking us in the houses, and you have to have an authorization to go to the supermarket, to go to the pharmacy. And I didn't want to fulfill the authorization, so I was going hiding to a very small grocery that I could see from my window, you know, without going to the road. and I was drawing in the house, and suddenly I started inventing like a like a cork that you put in the nose, you know, like with a air filter, so that actually we could just put the thing, you know, like in breathe. And it's amazing. It's true, man. Our tendency is to design tools for everything, you know, like, and I see myself already like designing new tools to industrialize, you know, to give corks to everybody to put in the nose, so that they can live a normal life and go out of the panic attack. It's completely it's amazing how our nature is. We are programmed to do that in a way, you know, like, and it's our nature. But of course, it's our nature also to kill each other and to kill animals, and we have to create to domesticate that nature, and I think it's a process of domestication also. The fact of not reacting so fast to the process of materialization, and I think it's very interesting to questioning that.
I think that's so important. I think that's one of the biggest things I think out of this experience is that a lot of the systems that were in place, I mean, as wonderful as a lot of the systems are, there are a lot of things that have just been made up because there's been space for that to happen. And then all of a sudden, just simple things, you know, like in terms of your relationship to your internet provider, or why you have to do things a certain way, or why do you have to do this? What's the reason for that? Like, you know, all these rules that we have a lot of rules, and just to exist, as you said, like if you wanted to go fishing, you know, to survive, because there is no food at the supermarket, you would be met with a range of laws that you would be breaking, from hunting to, you know, without a license or a permit. And then you start to question, it's like, well, there's that idea around being the natural citizen, where you just live on this land and therefore you don't necessarily have to abide by these rules. But these are all manufactured stuff that we've all agreed upon at some point. Either our ancestors agreed upon it, but we're all part of this thing, that we're all holding this kind of these ideas together as real, but like a lot of them don't exist, like the idea of land ownership, or the value of money, or the value of art, or the value of of a person's time and labor, or the value of a pastel de nata, or all these kind of things. They're all kind of things that we've all agreed upon somewhere or justified. But there's no, it's all a human construct, and we're operating on this super thin surface level that's this giant crust of this molten almost star that's spinning around a vast galaxy and with billions and billions of other bits of rock floating around. And it's crazy that the effort that
You're right.
we're
It's
trading bits.
super crazy. Well,
Yeah.
I think when you're speaking about Paulo Coelho, the source, going on the path and finding the source, but then what to do with the source that you were telling me about.
The sword, like
The sword.
what's it called? Yeah,
Paulo
sword.
Coelho,
Yeah,
Paulo
like
Coelho. No.
yeah.
I think I question a lot all my life about this idea of the sword, and I realized that was kind of a legacy of knowledge, like for us, the Occidental. Well, we have this old order from the Templaries, from the monks, from the Lusitania. So it's kind of a legacy between warriors, like warriors that were
Yeah.
they were defending territory, but more than everything, they were defending culture, cultural knowledge, like the community knowledge, the community, and I think this legacy of the sword, it's the passing of the protection from the knowledge, like a little bit like the sacred house in Timor again, like it's the museum of the family, the museum of the community, like where all the stories from our ancestors can combine into something, like and today I think that became genetic, that is this genetic memory, this genetic heresy, this that can be very diversified and fulfill of all the continents in the world, and I speak it probably more like that because of this legacy also of the Portuguese culture, but what I think it's interesting. It's, for example, today I'm the father of 3 kids, and
Amazing.
when I'm looking at my kids, I'm asking myself, like, what should I teach them? Like what they really need to know. Like above from all the protocols from the society of between the people that appear, the people that are more familiar, the fact that they are shy, or the fact that they want to express themselves. It's more like they going to school, they're learning obviously good important things like writing and reading and all that, but what should I teach them? Like what kind of, because they too they come with this tendency to create tools, like, and to materialize. So, and I'm questioning a lot, but of course lots. It's like you say about the natural things that are around us, that can persist to time in an ephemeral way, but enough to be symbolic for that process of work, and it's a huge question as an educator, as a father, and I think that Consolidar grows into a re-education program, because it's exactly that, like to try to find what is the issues that are really important to learn or to pass, between agriculture, for example. Today we have a knowledge about agriculture that we never had in the existence of the earth. Like this combining of information in the internet, having an encyclopedia that is actually interactive, that you can just digitalize anywhere and put some data, and immediately you receive information about where you are in the middle of a jungle or of the forest. It's amazing. We never combine, and we never concentrated so much information about agriculture, for example, or biology, or the fluxes in the world as we have today. So it's I think it's also a very important moment to rethink education, like and we know that education was created during the Industrial Revolution to create technicians and people able to operate in factories and all that. And today it's a moment to actually to re-questionate what is education, like, and what do we need to learn as humans,
Well, that's it. So the question now, I think, with the, like, I don't know about your art school experience, but I went through like an art college in Melbourne, and we did the university degree, and I kind of came out of it, and it was all about your practice and theory, and you could talk the art speak, and you could talk about all this stuff, but then it's like you're still in this bubble, and you're kind of encouraged in a way to stay in that bubble because it's a small community, but you're all sort of like kind of vying for the resources. So it's like not necessarily you're competing with that space. And then if you move out of that visual arts culture into, say, a different group like theater or live art, or all of a sudden you're in a parallel stream of different artists making work, and then you move into a different group, which is community-based work, and then working with non-artists that are professionally trained. You're in a different realm. And then so how does art translate in that space? What is the connection to creativity and that so you have to adjust it again? And I think that's kind of like where I think with any education is that, and maybe that's the most I've gotten out of an arts practice is adaptability and the problem solving. And these are the kind of key things for me that has sort of enriched my life, being able to adapt in these situations, and using like kind of my time growing up in the country, being remote, having that kind of self-reliability to make things and play. These are all kind of like important tools that are great for being an artist, but also great for everybody to use, in our society. And those are the kind of things I've sort of taken away, like in terms of education, is that there's a rigidity in not letting children just form their own expression by finessing and finishing off skills should come much later. When you're actually, but for the first half, I think it's all about free play and just experimenting with materials and having someone there to kind of facilitate. I feel like I'm going on a tangent here, Ricardo. But
no. It's I could talk with you. I need to go to visit you, and I think we
yeah.
talk. But obviously, as a program, it's good that we make it short, so that it's possible for the others to accomplish to see our talk, and to get some connection and knowledge from what we are saying. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
For your participation. Thank you so much for your friendship. And
yeah, man, I can't believe it.
I hope.
Yeah, I know. Once we're all like free and can move around, definitely it'd be great to catch up. Until then, please stay safe, and thanks again for putting this all together. It's amazing to bring this on. I know it must be
not possible without all of you, and without you also.
I know, but it's you've got that amazing drive, to pull it off. I think it's hats off, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of love to put into this to make it happen. So I really appreciate again being part of it. So and thanks for the chat, man, and thanks for letting me rant a little bit. I don't know sometimes where it's going to go. I do like a good tangent.
Thank you so much, and kisses to everybody in the house.
Yeah, and you too, man. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
See you soon. Okay, bye.
Soon.
Okay, até já.